At approximately 5:35 p.m. on September 4, 2012, officers from the Yonkers Police Department responded to a 911 call about a suspicious package being found in the woods. Upon arriving at the scene, first responders found a decomposing human body that was wrapped in a large black garbage bag. Detectives with the department's major case squad and crime scene unit took over the investigation and were able to identify the victim as Bronx resident 26-year-old Pamela Graddick. Investigators determined that Pamela had been shot twice in the head at a location outside of Yonkers and dumped in the woods in an attempt to conceal the crime. Police identified Wendy Aughe as a person of interest early on in the case. She was the girlfriend of Pamela and they lived in the same apartment. A month before Pamela's body was found on August 13, 2012, Aughe told Pamela's family that she had returned after the weekend to find Pamela gone, but items she should have had with her were still there. When Pamela's relatives learned that she had not shown up for work that morning, they reported her missing to New York City police. Investigators were unable to explain how the petite Wendy Aughe could have moved the larger Pamela's body to the secluded area in the woods from their apartment. Following a 2-year investigation, authorities were unable to come up with enough evidence to charge anyone, and the case was transferred to the Yonkers Police Department Cold Case Unit. In January of 2022, investigators conducted an interview with 41-year-old Wendy Aughe. During the interview, Aughe confessed. She said that she shot Pamela inside of the Bronx apartment they shared due to ongoing domestic issues between them. She said that she got the weapon from John Torres. Torres helped her move the body from her apartment to the woods. In March of 2022, both Wendy Aughe and John Torres were taken into custody. Torres was charged with second-degree criminal facilitation, first-degree prosecution hindering, and tampering with physical evidence, all of which are felonies. City of Yonkers Police Commissioner John J. Mueller said in a statement following the arrests, "The passage of time only reinforces our commitment to solving these heinous crimes. The Yonkers Police prides itself on focusing on victims and their families and doing whatever we can to deliver justice for them. I hope that these arrests bring some degree of closure to Pamela's family and friends, and I applaud the extraordinary efforts of our cold case detectives in closing out this case after so many years. Well done." In June 2023, Wendy Aughe was sentenced to 20 years to life for taking Pamela Graddick's life. Pamela's sister, Tawana McClellan, had this to say in court: "You took my sister from me. You took my sister from all of us, and I hope that burns in your soul." 23-year-old Renee Sweeney lived in Sudbury in 1998. Sudbury is a city in Ontario, Canada. Renee was a music student at Laurentian University and worked at an adult video store to help pay for school. It worked with her schedule, and it was quiet so she could do her homework when no one was there. On January 27, 1998, Renee was working at the video store in Paris Street. A man entered the store shortly before 11 a.m. and approached the counter. He stabbed Renee 30 times and then stole $200 from the cash register. The man then went to the washroom to clean up. When the man emerged from the washroom, he was surprised to see Renee was still alive. She was behind the counter trying to dial a number on the telephone. Renee then fought with the man and managed to scratch him, but she unfortunately succumbed to her injuries. The man was seen running away from the store. Police who arrived at the scene a short while later were able to collect large amounts of evidence from the scene. Police tracking dogs were able to recover a lightweight windbreaker-type jacket and white cotton gloves in a wooded area nearby that belonged to the suspect. The perpetrator's DNA was also found under Renee's fingernails and in the store's washroom. As the unknown man was seen running from the store by witnesses, they were able to give investigators a detailed description. He was described as white, in his early 20s, with dark, short hair, weighing 140 to 150 pounds, roughly 5'10 to 6 feet tall, with a slim build. He was also believed to have been wearing glasses. A sketch was shared around in Sudbury, with hopes that someone would come forward and identify the man. 2 weeks after the crime, on February 11, 1998, Sudbury police announced that they charged 31-year-old John Federley with taking Renee's life. Not long after, they realized they made a mistake and released him the following day. It was stated that the evidence did not hold up. A reward for information was originally posted at $25,000 and grew to $30,000 as more and more people were made aware of the case. Despite investigators having collected DNA belonging to the perpetrator, a match was not identified through the National DNA Database. Greater Sudbury police officers continued to check every 30 days. In 1999, investigators requested that men in the area provide a DNA sample so that they could be ruled out. On December 2, 1999, hundreds of men submitted their DNA to Sudbury police, making it the largest collection of DNA for a single police investigation in Canadian history at that time. On March 23, 2000, New Brunswick serial offender Michael Wayne McGray was named a possible suspect in Renee's case. He was convicted of taking 7 other people's lives. Nothing concrete was found linking him to Renee's slaying, however. On April 30, 2003, Sudbury police launched the ReneeSweeney.com website to help collect tips about the crime. For Renee's family, the wait for answers was agonizing. Her mother, Carol Strachan, released a CD of music titled Remembering Renee Sweeney in 2006. Her sister, Kim Sweeney, said in 2017 that she doesn't remember much about the minutes, days, and weeks following the news of what happened to Renee. Kim was in school at the time when she got a call from her stepfather telling her that something bad happened and she needed to come home. Her first thought was that something must have happened with her mom, who had multiple sclerosis. I had a bad feeling about the whole thing and wondered why I was not being told to go to the hospital instead, but I got in my car and headed home right away anyways, she said. I would usually drive past Renee's work, but for some reason I did not that day. When she got to the house and heard her mother crying, she knew something else was going on. They told me that Renee had been shot, because that's what they thought initially, Kim continued. So I went to grab my coat, wondering why we were all just standing around the house, but then they told me she wasn't with us anymore, and I just dropped to my knees. From that day forward, their lives changed forever. My mom never walked again, she said. It was just too hard for her to deal with. Her condition deteriorated pretty badly after, and she never really came back from it. And in November 2017, her mother passed away without ever finding out who took her daughter's life. I wished that she had a chance to close that book, Kim continued. Kim and Renee's biological father, who also had multiple sclerosis, took his own life in 1990, and her stepdad also passed away in recent years, leaving Kim with not a lot of remaining family members. What breaks her heart the most, she says, is the fact that her own 2 young children will never get a chance to meet their aunt. They would have loved her, she said, and she would have loved them. She wonders what Renee would have done with her life and where she would be today. I still think about it and her every day, said Kim. I just keep having these same questions run through my head. Why would someone do this? Why her? Is he still out there? I think that sometimes people just don't want to get involved, but I can't express how important it would be to finally get justice for my sister, she concluded. If there is any information or anyone who remembers anything, I hope they remember and realize that the case has not been closed. In 2017, the Greater Sudbury Police Service announced they had been working with Parabon Nanolabs, a Virginia-based technology company that specializes in DNA phenotyping. On January 23, 2017, they released a composite sketch of the perpetrator using DNA technology called snapshot. The term refers to a process that can predict the appearance of a suspect based on DNA evidence. Constable Megan O'Malley of the Greater Sudbury Police said the composite has provided police with more accurate information about the suspect's physical traits. We do know that he is of European descent, that he has light skin. He has either blue or green eyes, brown or blonde hair, and might have freckles. From 2017 to 2018, Sudbury Police received 360 tips from the public after the image sparked new public interest in the case. Of those tips, about 200 possible suspects were eliminated through DNA testing or other means. Detective Sergeant Robert Weston, who's the lead investigator on the case, said in 2018, "The fact that this has gone unsolved for 20 years is mind-blowing and frustrating at the same time." He also said it is difficult to investigate a crime that happened so many years ago, but he's determined to push the case forward and ultimately find the man responsible. The more you get involved in a case like this, you almost build a relationship somewhat with the victim. At the end of the day, the focus is on Renee. I still remain confident that the suspect will be identified. By late 2018, investigators had followed up on thousands of tips and ruled out 1,800 people. As 20 years had passed, most people assumed the suspect would never be caught. So it was a shock when on December 12, 2018, Sudbury Police announced that they arrested 38-year-old Robert Stephen Wright and charged him with taking Renee's life. His DNA matched the DNA belonging to the perpetrator. Wright was an 18-year-old Lockerbie Composite School student at the time of the slaying. He was arrested in North Bay, where he worked as a lab tech. Police Chief Paul Peterson said at the time of Wright's arrest, "We have been actively investigating information and tips throughout the past 20 years and up until today." Wright has made a number of court appearances since then. He was denied bail in March 2019 and in May 2020. On October 8, 2020, a judge ruled that Wright's trial will be held in Sudbury. This followed a change of venue motion filed by his lawyers, arguing that years of media coverage would make it difficult to find an impartial jury in the city. Stephen Wright's trial finally got underway on February 21, 2023. Wright denied any involvement. He said that he was finishing an exam at Lockerbie High School in Sudbury on the morning of January 27, 1998. Wright said he was wearing a teal jacket, long-sleeved t-shirt, jeans, gloves, and running shoes that cold morning. After his exam, Wright said he had some time to waste and decided to check out the adults-only video store on Paris Street. Wright testified he could not see inside the store before entering it, as the doors were dark and covered. Wright told the court the first thing he noticed when entering the store were video boxes strewn across the carpeted floor. The next thing he said he noticed was a substance had spilled onto the floor, but testified that at the time his brain did not register that it could be blood. Still processing what he was seeing, said Wright, he made his way further into the store until he saw Renee Sweeney's body on the floor. Wright told the jury he moved towards Sweeney's body to see if she was still breathing and to check for a pulse, which he said was something he learned during his days as a Boy Scout. He said he used his right hand to shake Renee's shoulder and asked if she was okay, but ultimately he said he could not detect anything, not breath, nor pulse, or any movement. Suddenly, Wright said he backed away from Renee, overwhelmed. He told the court he realized there was blood on his jacket and that he was freaked out. He told the court, "I ran because I was terrified. I was a stupid kid. I wish I had stayed." "I can't describe what was going through my mind," Wright said. "I was completely overwhelmed at that point. I just wanted out of there." Wright told the jury that when he got up from the body, he had to stabilize himself and grabbed a hold of something, but doesn't remember what. Wright was asked if he was aware of a cash tray on the counter where a fingerprint matching his DNA was found. Wright said he wasn't aware of the tray and added that he was not sure what he grabbed onto while trying to steady himself. Wright said he did not flip the money clips of the cash tray up and that he did not steal anything from the store. He said the next thing he remembers doing is crouching down, grabbing his teal jacket and gloves, and running away. Wright was asked why he decided to discard his jacket and gloves. I realized at that point that I had run from a crime scene, and I was terrified that I would be accused. The worst decision in my life was to run. I did not even know if I consciously made that decision. After that, Wright said he briefly thought about going to a friend's house, but decided against it as he did not want to involve anyone else. He said he took the first bus home in Valcaron from the City Center Mall in downtown Sudbury. Wright said he arrived home to an empty house that afternoon. He told the court he never told anyone about what happened, not even his parents. I just wanted to distance myself from the whole thing and forget about it. It was very traumatizing. I did not want to worry them, and I was also ashamed of running. There were lots of inconsistencies with Wright's story. It did not explain how his DNA got under Renee's fingernails and in the washroom. It also did not explain how his fingerprints were found under the cash box. Furthermore, no one else was seen at the crime scene, and no one else's DNA was found. On March 29, 2023, he was found guilty of all the charges against him. The jury delivered its verdict in the Sudbury courthouse after deliberating for a little more than a day. A cheer went up from the side of the courtroom where the Sweeney family was sitting, and people hugged each other with tears in their eyes. There were also tears in the eyes of Wright's mother, and his father gave a meek wave as they watched their 43-year-old son be led out of the courtroom by police officers. With Renee's sister Kim standing next to her grinning, family friend Kelly Irvine told reporters they were thrilled and ecstatic with the jury's decision. Renee Sweeney got justice today after what horribly happened 25 years ago, Kelly Irvine said. Justice Robbie Gordon will sentence 43-year-old Stephen Wright on June 29, 2023. It is expected to be a sentence of 25 years. Renee's sister Kim had the last word in her victim statement. Do you know what it's like to have lost your best friend? I have, and there aren't any words in the English dictionary that describe the hell that losing Renee has caused my family. I had to look at that jacket that was covered in the blood of my sister and be reminded of the brutality. I am asking to sentence him to the maximum sentence possible. We have lost 25 years of our life. He should get 25 years to think about what he has done. "29-year-old Wendy Aughe lived in Bellingham, Washington in 1987. She was a beauty school student and the mother of 2 young children. Wendy was last seen leaving La Paloma restaurant in Bellingham during the early morning hours of April 25, 1987. She was driving her 1972 Ford Torino, which was painted red with a black vinyl top. Wendy was accompanied by the restaurant's bartender, a drifter, who called himself Mike Johnson. Little did she know, his real name was Darren D. O'Neill. Wendy has never been seen or heard from again. Her car was found abandoned in Eugene, Oregon on May 2, 1987. O'Neill's fingerprints were inside. When authorities searched Wendy's apartment after her disappearance, they found signs of a struggle, as well as blood, male DNA, and soaked bedsheets. An all-points bulletin was issued for O'Neill. He had worked for the La Paloma restaurant for only 2 days before he disappeared after emptying the cash register and stealing liquor. The United States Customs authorities reported photographing him driving across the border into Canada. He was apparently alone in the vehicle at the time. When investigators finally caught up to O'Neill, he was incarcerated for another crime, but more on that later. Frustratingly, without Wendy's body, investigators did not believe they had enough to convict O'Neill for taking Wendy's life. the case went cold. In 2015, the Bellingham Police Department received a report from the Washington State Patrol Crime Laboratory on evidence found at Wendy's home. The lab used the male DNA found at the crime scene and entered it into the state and nationwide databases. Recently, they were able to match it with O'Neill's DNA. Then on March 1, 2023, it was announced that 63-year-old Darren D. O'Neill was charged with taking Wendy Aughe's life. He was extradited from Oregon, where he was serving a life sentence for an unrelated crime, to Washington State. He is currently being held on a $10 million bond. O'Neill refused to tell investigators where they could find Wendy's body. O'Neill was born on February 26, 1960, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He was drafted into the Army and had to move to numerous cities, including Bavaria, Germany, and Fort Polk, Louisiana. He was discharged on February 28, 1982, and that is where his crime spree began. It started with public indecencies in Colorado Springs. In November 1984, O'Neill was charged with assaulting a woman, but she ended up disappearing, and the charges were dropped. In 1987, O'Neill moved to Puyallup, Washington, and found a truck driving job in Tacoma. During the evening of January 17, 1987, O'Neill spotted a 14-year-old girl walking on a freeway to a convenience store. O'Neill abducted the girl, assaulted her, and then released her a few hours later. He then moved to Edgewood, Washington, where he found work as a laminator under the alias Herb Johnson. O'Neill took 22-year-old Robin Smith's life on March 27, 1987. Her body was found in his car. It was then, on April 24, 1987, that he took Wendy Aughe's life. After that, he moved to Tennessee and ultimately Lakeland, Florida, under the alias John Mayo. On September 22, 1988, police pulled O'Neill over for a traffic violation, but he attempted to escape, prompting a chase. O'Neill attempted to escape on foot after crashing his car into a curb, but was soon caught. O'Neill was positively identified as the person responsible for what happened to Robin Smith through fingerprint analysis. In January 1989, O'Neill agreed to a guilty plea in Robin's case in exchange for a reduced prison sentence. O'Neill was sentenced to 27 years and 9 months in prison, the maximum sentence available under his plea deal. In Oregon, he was sentenced for all his assaults and kidnappings. He was given a total sentence of 135 years in prison. O'Neill is the prime suspect in the kidnapping and slaying of 22-year-old Leah Elizabeth Zubert. On June 9, 1987, Leah was heading from Twin Falls, Idaho for Boise to reach the airport where her fiancé, Dwayne Abbott, was meeting her. Leah experienced car trouble on Interstate 84 near Mountain Home. A friend she called from a truck stop was the last person to hear from her. When she did not arrive at the airport, her family reported her missing. On June 13, 1987, motorists east of La Grande, Oregon, discovered her body. She had been strangled. Several witnesses saw a man matching O'Neill's description at several nearby locations along the interstate, as well as in Spokane, Washington, hours after Leah Zubert went missing. O'Neill is also suspected of the failed kidnapping of a woman in Burley, Idaho, a week after, though no further details have been provided. Darren O'Neill is currently awaiting trial in Wendy Aughe's case. Dispatchers received reports of shots fired on Winship Street in Hartford, Connecticut on June 22, 2019. When officers arrived, they found a man in his 30s who had been shot. He was transported to Hartford Hospital and underwent emergency surgery. The man has since recovered from his injuries. A second man was found in a vehicle nearby. The man was not alive anymore and had been fatally shot. Authorities identified the man as 24-year-old Eros Diaz. He lived in Avon, Connecticut. Eros's family offered a $500,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction. After a lengthy investigation, Police said 35-year-old Gino McMahon of Hartford was identified as a suspect. McMahon was arrested on June 13, 2023, and charged with taking Eros's life. A motive has not been made public, but it was noted that both Eros and McMahon were involved with illegal substances. Witnesses came forward, placing McMahon at the crime scene as well as DNA on a hat found near the crime scene. He is being held in lieu of $3 million bail and is set to appear in Hartford Superior Court on July 10, 2023. According to the affidavit, Eros Diaz and Xavier Lugo, who was 31 at the time, were shot on June 22, 2019 at about 9:30 p.m. in the area of 25 Winship Street after they were involved in a car crash. Eros Diaz was shot in the head and pronounced deceased at the scene, and Lugo, who was found about a block away from where the shooting took place, suffered multiple gunshot wounds and was initially listed in critical condition. Eros's mother, Catherine Diaz, said, "We have worked and prayed for this day to come. We never gave up hope that my son's attacker would be brought to justice. I truly hope that our effort to get the perpetrator off the streets protects other mothers from the loss of a child or a loved one. We are thankful for the many members of the criminal justice system who worked for 4 years to help my family begin to heal."